Time for Ask the Mayor with Beatrice Mayor Stan Worth today. If you have a question, 402-228-5924. Good morning, Mayor.
Morning, Doug.
How are you today?
I'm just fine. And
Great.
yourself?
Doing really well.
Good.
You tell me before we went on that no barricades on the South 6th Bridge anymore.
Bridge railings are completed,
Good.
and the lights are up, and the lights were on the last couple of nights, and looks really nice. It's quite an improvement. It's really an improvement to get the barricades gone, but we certainly appreciate the public's patience in allowing us to get this done. I think it's a really nice improvement. It's pretty amazing what the new bridge railings look like versus what the old looked like, and vast improvement.
A little bit tougher to do this one than the West Court Street.
It was.
Bridge,
They had to heat up quite a few of the bolts and the nuts just so that they could pry them loose and use an impact wrench to get them off. But the west side seemed the west side seemed to go a lot quicker than the east side for whatever reason. I don't know, but it's completed and looks nice.
So the old rails, you just scrap those out? Is that what happens?
God, I hope so.
Get rid of them however you can. Yeah, it does look really nice. In fact, the barriers are a little lower too, so you get more of a view of them.
You get more view of it. Still looking at possible ways of kind of dolling up the barriers on West Court Street. Can't remove them simply because of they're a permanent structure. And but they don't look very nice. They have a lot of concrete spalding that has occurred over the years, and looking to put some kind of a substance on them that will withstand the freeze thaw and withstand any salt and other materials that are put on the bridge.
Between the new railings and lights and the Gage County Foundation Depot, the before and after shot of that really looks nice now. Now all you have to do is get rid of the big thing right in between them there.
I know.
Small task there, huh?
Continue to work on it, and that work will continue to rid the community of the Dempster building. Even though there's a lot of history there, the whole building needs to be history.
Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about that in the past. What would that eventually be turned into? Basically parkland, or how do you...
I think at this point it would be. I mean, it could be used for commercial use, maybe light industrial at some point in time. Living space is not an option just because of some of the disagreeable stuff that's there. Not that it's going to be harmful to anyone that certainly would use the green space. Let's say it was put into a parkland, but if there was living space, people that lived there for a long period of time, there's a lot of arsenic in the soil, but there's a lot of arsenic everywhere in Gage County. And so some of the other materials will be cleaned up at some point in time once that building is gone. And obviously the Department of Environmental Quality will make sure that it is safe for at least people that are there on a temporary basis.
How far along is the assessment process on what is there? I'm not talking about the cleanup of it, but just what they know of.
It's just continual. And, you'll see a pickup park there from the state of Nebraska. 3 weeks later, you'll see another pickup park there, or a couple of them, but then you won't see anybody for a while. Yeah. So it's just an ongoing process of going in there, taking samples, going back to the state labs, studying what's there, and again, it seems like it will be forever, but once the work starts, I don't think it'll take very long to get rid of it.
Is there a possibility of a brownfield grant on that?
There is. The brownfield grant isn't a huge dollar amount. It's going to take a lot of money to tear this building down, and take a lot of money to make sure that whatever is in the soil is removed. But we don't know what degree that is. So when I say a lot of money, I really don't know what that final estimate could be.
Okay. Well, one of the major things that happened Monday night at the city council meeting is a structural change in how the Beatrice Municipal Airport is governed, going from an authority board to an advisory board. Again, the voting goes on for the board spots in November.
Correct.
And I assume the winners would be appointed. Is that the goal?
That is correct. Okay. They will be appointed by the mayor and ratified by the city council, and they will serve 5-year terms. And I think what we'll more than likely do is stagger some of those terms. So there will be individuals that are going to be on there for 1 year all the way to 5 years, and then that board will rotate. Doesn't mean that they won't be reappointed, because sometimes it's pretty hard to find good people to serve in positions like that, or any position on a volunteer basis for the city. So if you're on there for a 1-year term, doesn't mean you're not going to be on there and reappointed for a 5-year term. So it's the Airport Authority was deemed really non-existent after June 1st, when they were out of debt. State statute indicates that they have to have debt to actually be a viable legal entity. If you're not a viable legal entity, signing contracts becomes a real problem. Insuring property becomes a problem. Liability of what happens there could be a real issue. So I think the city is being proactive. But we're not the first. There's other communities in the state of Nebraska that has done the same thing. I think most recent, the city of Crete consumed or assumed the responsibility of the airport authority. Obviously,
as you go through time, appointments to that board will be up to a new mayor, because you're ending your second term here.
Yep.
But just in general, is it important to have people who have some experience or interest in aviation or flying, or not necessarily?
Absolutely. I think that's important, just because they understand the processes. They certainly have gone through especially those that are pilots, have gone through the rigors of training, knowing the aeronautical terms, all of that I think is really necessary, and understand whether or not you need a longer runway, you need a bigger apron, you need a lot of different improvements. They understand that. So I think it's necessary that we look at those individuals who have an interest in serving on the Airport Authority Board.
The new airport manager has taken over for Diana Smith, who retired. Basically, when for whatever projects in the future, whether it's an apron improvements, a more hangar space, whatever it might be, that person's kind of still the contact point for like FAA grants, things like that, but it's overseen now by city administration then, is that it?
That's exactly right. Dennis Schmidt is the new airport manager, and he will become a department head, similar to the department heads that are falling under the umbrella of the Board of Public Works.
Okay.
And, the advisory board will make recommendations regarding operations, maintenance, and any future development that occurs. But Dennis then will impart that information to the Board of Public Works, and then recommendations will be made on behalf of the advisory board to the City Council.
What level of budget support do you expect might come about for the airport? Because they had their own sort of property tax allocation levy based on that. How might that change?
Well, I think obviously it's going to be consumed within the city budget. I think that whatever that tax assessment was is based on their operational costs. I think it was $123,000 this last year that we just approved the additional tax assessment. Prior to that, it was like $133,000, so it went down. But to give you an exact number, Doug, can't do it. Don't know.
All right. Then you got to factor in fuel sales and FAA grants and all that.
Sure, you have income that's coming back, and you have rental space, and I think that's one thing that the city will take a strong look at is increasing some of the hangar space that is out there, because there's quite a waiting list today.
City's got one of the nicer airports around for a city of this size, it seems like.
That has been the compliment that the airport authority and their manager has received over the years, for many years. There was some really nice improvements done, I want to say 15 years ago. It could be longer ago than that, but some really nice improvements that I think has enhanced the visibility of the airport, the usage of the airport, and I was out there at one of the airport authority meetings not too long ago when we started talking about this idea, and a couple of fellows came in, can't remember where they were from, but they were amazed at how nice it was, how accommodating it was, and how accommodating the people are.
Right next to an industrial park, too, so if anybody wants to fly in from a company headquarters, you're right there.
It's an economic development tool, believe me.
Yeah. Monday night, a pretty sizable bid for water projects under the interest-free loan you're using from the state of Nebraska, nearly $3 million to a construction company to do the water main work for in the downtown area in there. But at the same time, you have another project ahead of that's getting underway pretty soon. Here.
Yeah, that the transmission line, the redundancy transmission line at the new wellhead area that we just recently purchased will be going on this fall. Judd Brothers is doing that project, and I think that was a little over a $2.5 million project. The one that we approved Monday night with Myers Construction from Broken Bow is for the downtown area to enhance some lines that we have downtown, converting a couple of them from smaller lines to 12-inch lines, and then I think there's another one that goes to an 8-inch line. Most of that will be bored underneath, obviously underground, and that obviously will keep us from having to close blocks of streets and that kind of thing.
There was some early discussion about when that all begins, kind of seeming like you're leaning more toward next year rather than this fall.
Yeah, we kind of hope that maybe they start next spring, but the bid has been received. It's been approved. We ratified it at the city council meeting, and if that construction company wants to get started now, we're going to let them go.
Kind of sounded like the least disruptive of the projects would be the first one you do, and then wait on the
I think it was on 4th Street is where they're going to start, yes.
Okay. All right. Back with more on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Stan Worth in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor today with Mayor Stan Worth. What study is going to be done on the Paddock Kensington building to kind of determine structure, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, all that. What do you think you'll find? It hasn't been empty that long.
No, it hasn't been empty that long. And I think that AgeMark, which owned it and used it as an assisted living project, had to meet certain standards to be a viable assisted living project under federal standards. So I think that the property is in good condition, but if the city is anticipating owning it at some point in time, we want to make sure that it's not going to be a money pit for us, that the electrical is in sound condition, and it's going to be a conditional look. They're not going to tear into walls or anything like that, but it's going to be whatever is visible. Now, as far as mechanical, that is going to be a little different story. Well, they'll start up the equipment, and the temperatures have been pretty chilly. So my guess is there's the mechanical part of it is in operation today. So they'll just come down, take a look at it. I think the cost is $8,000. AgeMark is going to split the difference, and then we're going to own the study. But we want to make sure that we're not getting into something that we don't want to get into. I think the purchase price today, or the selling price today, is $1.8 million. We think that we can get into it at a very reasonable amount of money. We have some developers that are very interested in it. They're not interested in it at the $1.8 million. And I think the other side of it is there are some incentives that the new owners would certainly want to take advantage of. One is the Nebraska Historic Tax Credits. The historic tax credits sunsets at the end of this year. It will be presented in the legislature again this session to extend those tax credits. I think they're also taking a look at extending those on a federal level at the same time. Those historic tax credits can be very valuable to someone who wants to purchase a historic building like the Kensington. And if the legislature then passes legislation that says that we're going to reinstitute those tax credits at a certain percentage, then maybe by July or August of next year, that process could go into effect. We could market that building up until that time and hopefully get it sold.
If everything goes right, the study comes out fine, no problems, the tax credit issue sorts itself out, the building's sold. Looking far down the road, any specific uses that might be best for that building? You got a multi-story building, a lot of space to fill, but in terms of maybe like a multi-use thing, has there been anything kind of mentioned as, hey, this would be nice to go in here, maybe something else use this part of the building?
There could be some apartment living. There could be some retail space on the ground floor. I think having a center for individuals that are senior citizens would be ideal, an assisted living project. Parking's limited, and so that isn't an end-all barrier, but it is a bit of a barrier. With the assisted living program, there are a lot of individuals, and I'm trying to say this as nicely as I possibly can, a lot of individuals who don't drive. Children have said, you ran through that stop sign. I need to have the car keys.
Yeah.
And so that's what we experienced, even though we had a parking lot across the street from the Kensington. Very few people used it because very few people had cars. And I think that would be ideal if we could get maybe another assisted living program.
Okay. Across the street, the former JCPenney building, you're moving forward on transition of that to another company who would do the cleanup, put a roof on it and everything.
Right.
Had some discussion Monday night about, was the process appropriate that you used? After hearing all that, what's your response on that?
Well, again, and I don't know that there's anyone that could argue that this was the best business decision that was made, even though a couple of the city councilmen really didn't like the process where we didn't have an outright bidding they wanted to separate the two. So it was, you do this for us, we're going to do this for you. And that was kind of the flavor of the meeting. We had Brandon Krause and Kelly Juergens, who formed an LLC, who will be buying the property from the city. Well, it was ratified Monday night, buying the property from the city for what the city has against it. They will gut the building to the tune of about $20,000 to $30,000, whatever they get into it, maybe more than that, and then put a roof on it for about $150,000, and then repurpose that building, so do a build-out inside. They're not asking anything from the city, not one dime. In return, Brandon Krause, who has a roofing company and has been doing all of the roofs in the Flowing Spring area, will come in and do all the roofs that the city had damaged in the June hailstorm. Again, not asking for anything. There were other individuals interested in that property, but they were asking for, they were not only asking for LB 840 CDBG dollars, tax increment financing, plus up to a $200,000 forgivable loan. You weigh those two options. The best option is we don't have to put any money into this. And we still get the roofs repaired.
Yeah. Some people might ask, what was the level of the roof repair that they'll do in terms of value? Because you had quite a bit of damage, didn't you?
We did. I think it was a little over $2 million.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so it was pretty hefty.
Kind of turns out to be a little bit of a no-brainer then after a while as far as the selection of the...
It does. And I know that there was angst among some of the city council members that, why didn't we bid this out? Don't have to. State statute says we don't have to. we struck a deal. Again, I think it was, in my opinion, the best business deal we could have done.
Is that because of in the law, isn't there kind of a difference between like a material contract and a professional services contract? Is that the basis for it? Why
that
you
is
did
correct.
I see.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now that, the warmer season here is going to be in the 80s here.
I love it.
Next, yeah, you got to love it. But, I mean, the warmer season, as we know it, is pretty much over with. And each year, you have a certain number of vegetation complaints, nuisance complaints that come about. Any kind of thought about how it went this year in terms of those types of complaints?
Hundreds of complaints. Most of them vegetation, but not only that, but people that have a tendency to collect a lot of stuff and put a lot of stuff around their properties. So we had a lot of those complaints. I think the Community Development Department is excited that we had a hard freeze the other night. So some of this vegetation dies off and we don't have to handle those complaints anymore. I can't imagine the countless letters that are sent out, weed notices and junked vehicle notices, on and on and on and on. It's a very busy department. It's a department that has to handle things that mostly, for the most part, are negative related issues. And how they keep a stiff upper lip every day, I'm not quite sure, but it's a pretty difficult task.
You handled the issue before a little bit, but is that department adequately staffed number-wise for the amount of work they do?
Yeah, I think right now, especially going into the fall and winter months, I think certainly is. The new administration.
Pass that on to somebody else.
Pass it on to we'll more than likely reassess that again as the spring season comes around. We certainly want input from our Community Development Director, Rob Merrow, and his staff as to what they really think is needed, because not only are they doing this, but they're doing building inspections at the same time. It's a busy department, and it's a department, however, that is really critical.
You're reviewing plans, too, for subdivisions?
Absolutely. I mean, it just goes on and on. So every day they go to work, they don't worry about what's next.
Okay. Back to wrap up, Ask the Mayor in a moment. We have only about 4 minutes left today. I did want to ask you a question about, there's kind of the ongoing discussion about improvements on Lincoln Street, 33rd, related to where the school is going to be at. And there's some discussion about, how that's coming along, who pays for what. My question is, the condition of Lincoln Street right now is another option just to not do anything with it for a while and wait a few years and see kind of how the traffic kind of flows out and what kind of condition the roads are in.
Yeah, and that's an option, but I don't think it is the option.
I see.
I think we have to improve the street process, the streetscape. I think we have to make sure that there are proper turn lanes for the safety of school buses, parents that are delivering their kids there, picking up kids. I think it's necessary that we are very proactive in trying to get some things done. The site plan, I think, is pretty well set, and so the school has hired an engineering firm to come in and take a look at exactly where the turn lane should be, where the egress to the school property should be. So that's a study that will be completed here. My guess is pretty shortly, because they've looked at these two corridors, 33rd Street and Lincoln Street, before. And once we get that report, I think we have a little better understanding of what needs to be done and what the costs are going to be. We know it's going to be expensive. We certainly hope that there is some cost sharing that is available. I know that the school has applied for some grants to make it, to avail themselves to some additional money to help with the infrastructure.
Your staff, too, applies for transportation or grant assistance, too, on projects like this?
Submitted 3 different grants that total quite a bit of money. Are we going to get that? Maybe get some. Whatever we get is going to be a bonus. Okay.
Maybe one last topic today. You had a report on Monday night, a quarterly report from Gage Area Growth Enterprise on things going on. And one of the topics that's been front and center for several weeks, months now, is childcare availability in the area, and it's a workforce issue because if you can't, families moving in to do a job, if they have kids and they can't find, they both work, they can't find places to take them, that then becomes kind of a hindrance.
Well, it's becoming a hotspot, and it affects workforce, and so insufficient child care not only is a problem nationwide, it's a problem here in Gage County, and I think at the meeting Monday night, Rachel Crackmeyer, who is director of Engage, indicated that there are some 400 spaces that are needed for children who need child care just in Gage County alone. That affects our Nebraska economy, our local economy, through absenteeism, workplace productivity, and also employee turnover. So it's a big deal. I know that Engage is working on it. They've applied for, and I think are going to receive about $100,000, just south of $100,000 grant to assist some people in doing some improvements to their child care facilities so that they can accommodate some additional children.
Grant programs like that are nice, but being that it's a statewide issue and a workforce issue, wouldn't it be appropriate for state government to step up and say, hey, if we think it's an issue, let's apply some resources to it?
And the state certainly recognizes that it is an issue because it is multi-million dollars in losses because of productivity that is lost, absenteeism, some of the other examples that I just stated.
And workforce availability, people wanting to come to the area for jobs. If they can't get those services, it kind of cuts your availability.
Believe me, a young family, that's what they're going to look at first, and they're going to look at the cost of it, and then they're going to weigh their options.
That and schools and quality of life things and stuff like that.
That's exactly right, Doug.
All right. Mayor, thanks for being with us again on Ask the Mayor.
Always a pleasure.